Hello everyone and welcome to my studio. In this video I want to show you some tips on how to create an iris, and this is a shortened version of the class which is 3 hours and 15 minutes long, but you can get this class for free if you'd like to create and follow along in real time. I include the reference, traceable line art along with a supply list, and I even add a colour chart so you can match the colour or brand of pencils. Just click on the link in the description box below. On the first petal, use a light pressure and begin to fill in. You always want to create a light but also even layer. You can use single strokes with a slight feathering, or you can go back and forth. Using either one of these techniques, you reduce stop and start lines if your pressure remains light. Great coverage at this point is not the focus, but the main idea is to just get one layer and an even layer. Don't be concerned about the graininess at this point, as until more layers are built up, this is normal. It helps to keep things even if you use the very slightly flat edge on the tip that gets slightly worn down after use. It's not noticeable here on the screen, but this is useful for blending entire petals evenly. When there are transitions, we always want them to be nice and even for the subsequent layers. This takes practice, so when in doubt, go even lighter. Even if you can't see the pigment, it's there, and it's the most important part of coloured pencil work. It's important to remove graphite lines. Graphite muddies up the work, and once coloured pencil has been placed on top of graphite, it's impossible to fully remove. So just dab off the lines with a kneaded eraser so that you can still see them, but they're not going to interfere with your coloured pencil work later. Changing to the lighter blue on the second petal, feather the colour in and follow the edge. So find the edge and then lift your pressure. Follow the shape of the petal as it curves, and following the shape gives the petal realism and provides a three-dimensional quality. Whenever you're doing botanical studies, it's really important to keep edges clean and crisp. I like to use a sharpener with a helical blade to get an extra sharp point. The length of the pencil point is much less important than how sharp the point is, and I like the sharp little points over and above the sharp long points that can be fragile and break. The sharper the better if you want precision and detail, and this means sharpening often. When I'm busy working on a study that takes a few hours like this, I use an electric helical sharpener with its own container. Good ones are X-Acto School Pro, Swordfish, Derwent Superpoint and iPoint Halo. Pay attention to the shape of each petal, and by the way, it's not necessary to add in all the veins to show realism. Just try not to create double lines and avoid too much pressure. It's far better to achieve several light layers to go in with a medium pressure, because the paper's surface has peaks and valleys which are known as tooth, and when pigment is applied lightly there's more available tooth to work with, but once the tooth is filled you can't easily add more, so always pay attention to your pressure. And if you're new to coloured pencil work, you probably aren't even aware that you're applying too much pressure, so just graze the paper, as you really can't go too lightly. And if you can master light pressure, half the battle with coloured pencils is done, because that means you know how to begin layering and blending. Paper choices are really important. Different papers produce different results. I know when I follow a tutorial that my results won't be the same if I use a different paper than the teacher's using, even if I complete the drawing step by step perfectly. The paper that I'm using is Strathmore Bristol Vellum 300 series that has just a little bit of tooth to it, so the pigment lays down really well. I like Bristol smooth paper a lot too, but I feel that for a piece of work that I want to complete in less time with less layers, that the vellum is the best way to go. Bristol smooth is almost polished in comparison, and while details are amazing on it, I didn't want to build that many layers. I wanted something that could be completed in about 3 hours without any real burnishing, which is hard on the hands and very time consuming, or the use of solvent, which a lot of people are sensitive to. I use a sheet of glassine to shield my hand throughout, but you can use a sheet of computer paper or wax or parchment paper instead, and it's really useful for not accidentally smearing pigment. Coloured pencil work isn't messy, but when you're applying dark colour like I am, small particles can discolour the white paper without you noticing. A kneaded eraser is good for lifting colour, but it's difficult to remove colour completely, so a shield solves the issue. And noticing that I'm mostly using just the darker pencil, but I'm able to get transitions with just that one pencil. And in this exercise I used only 8 pencils, but mostly just 2, the blue and the purple, so it is possible to get realism as long as there is enough contrast. I've deliberately chosen less colours to make it easier. It takes away the element of choice. Well, why would you want to do that? Well, colour is not as important as having the right dark, mid or light tones, and this is really a very important factor. Too many colours is too confusing and also just unnecessary to achieve a great result. It's easy if you're beginning to choose way too many colours, especially too many that are similar, but that can just become confusing and your work can start looking amateurish and less cohesive. Begin by choosing less, as you can always add a colour if you need to, but what you mostly need is a different value. Colour is great fun, but there's a reason for the expression, value does all the work, colour gets all the credit. How you hold your pencil is also important, and whenever details are added, you want to hold your fingers towards the tip of the pencil for greater control and precision. So I'm adding in a second layer now, and I'm deliberately leaving part of that petal lighter at the top to create the impression that the petal is curved, and this is helped by drawing curving shapes in the veins. Everything about this petal is made up of lines. Curving them in different directions gives that petal shape, and adding transitions from dark to light allows the eye to move. Pay attention to the fluted edges, because that's what gives the iris its distinctive iris shape, and it's not necessary to add in every single vein. Now if your pencil marks are too harsh, you can dab with the kneaded eraser to lighten them. And I've deliberately left the white of the paper to show through instead of using a white pencil. White coloured pencils are rarely opaque enough to achieve a bright. In order to achieve this large petal and make it look realistic, I had to create a much darker value on the right hand side compared to the left hand side. Also notice that the veins are shaped differently. And it's always worth noticing the light source in a drawing, where light falls and where your shadows need to be. To create the veins, I've got my hand up close to the tip of the pencil for the best control, and I'm using a flicking motion with just one deliberate stroke. The stem is made up of just 2 different greens, and I'm leaving some of the paper to show through, as the issue we run into with coloured pencils is there aren't any really truly opaque whites. But since I'm using a white paper, I can just avoid those highlighted areas and make the white paper its own highlight. And there really isn't anything to do in this area that's complex, just 3 lines, because there's one in the centre and then some light blending up to meet the beginning of the body of the iris itself. Once the flower is nearing completion, I want to make sure that there is enough contrast. I know from the reference that certain petals are much darker than others, and I'm at the stage where you could say I'm finished, but I'm far from it. By adding that extra contrast, I'm able to create a whole lot more depth. Never be scared to add more contrast. It's really the icing on the cake to a drawing and makes a world of difference. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so that you know when new content is being released. And don't forget to grab my free class, and I'll see you in the next video.